A story filled with regret and missed opportunities unfolds before us like a tragic play, where the protagonist faces the painful consequences of her decisions. Her rash words and thoughtless actions led to the loss of the most precious thing, the love of her life. Now, drowning in a sea of sorrow, she bitterly realizes her mistakes, dreaming of the chance to turn back time. Her heart aches with the desire to give her husband the love and respect he deserved. But the past is relentless, and it is impossible to undo what has been done. In her desperate repentance, she turns to anyone willing to listen, asking them to learn from her bitter experience. She warns against the insults and neglect that can poison even the strongest relationships. She calls for open and honest communication, filled with love and compassion. She urges everyone to value those who are near and never take their presence for granted, for when they leave, only the emptiness of regret remains. Despite the fact that the present seems bleak and hopeless, the heroine tries to keep her spirits up and not lose hope. She expresses sincere gratitude to her family and friends for their invaluable support, believing that she will be able to find a job and regain confidence in the future. She is determined not to give up and rebuild her life, despite the loss that has befallen her. In a frank confession, she shares the moment that became fatal in her relationship. I asked him if I could participate in a swinger party and tried to explain that it wasn't cheating. This revelation, made under the veil of anonymity, reveals the depth of the personal tragedy she is experiencing. The story begins with an account of childhood and youth. The heroine, let's call her Alex, who is now 29 years old, and her ex-husband Sam, a 30-year-old man, grew up in a small town. Their parents were best friends even before they were born, and this close connection was passed on to them. They were inseparable friends, spending most of their time together. In high school, friendship turned into romantic feelings, and they became high school sweethearts, seemingly doomed to a happy future. Throughout their college years, they remained true to their love, and 2 years after graduation, their union was sealed in marriage, marking the first and only romantic experience in each other's lives. Fate decreed that they would be each other's first in everything, without the opportunity to experience other relationships or discover the world of romance with different partners. At first, the fact that they were each other's first didn't bother her much. The heroine, who worked as a sales assistant in a clothing store, enjoyed a flexible schedule that allowed her to choose shifts, work part-time, and swap shifts with colleagues. Alex, on the other hand, built a successful career in cybersecurity and provided a stable income, allowing his wife to take care of the household chores. She preferred flexible work, not wanting to turn into a housewife languishing alone waiting for children, whom they planned to have in their mid-30s. However, these plans were apparently not destined to come true. In the very beginning, their marriage resembled a fairy tale: exciting dates, passionate sex life, and incredible romance that Alex showed, surprising her with flowers, spontaneous surprises, and help around the house. Life seemed perfect. However, over time, cracks began to appear in their relationship, and what once seemed like a perfect marriage, despite all the romantic gestures and fabulous moments, began to weigh on the heroine. She felt overwhelmed and limited in her relationship with Sam, who was her friend, confidant, and the only person she had ever been close to. And although it was comforting at first, it gradually turned into a feeling of being bound. The main character was haunted by a persistent feeling of freedom and being driven into a corner. It seemed to her that something important was slipping away, that other people were experiencing bright moments and enjoying life. Stories of other people's adventures and freedom of choice caused her bouts of envy. She dreamed of breaking free from the boundaries set by marriage. Her husband Sam was a staunch supporter of monogamy and would not even consider open relationships or any experiments on the side. The heroine respected his principles and shared fidelity in marriage, but this time she desperately wanted to know what it meant to explore the unknown. It wasn't about finding new love or emotional attachment, but about satisfying simple human curiosity, about wanting to experience something different from the usual at least once. This desire grew into a real obsession that took over her thoughts more and more every day. It wasn't about a lack of love for Sam or an underestimation of their relationship, but about an unquenchable thirst for novelty and new sensations. The growing sense of constraint in her marriage fostered a feeling of resentment towards Sam, even though her reason told her he had done nothing wrong. The problem lay in her own unrealized desires and a feeling of missed opportunities. To avoid obsessive thoughts and the temptation of infidelity or suggesting an open marriage, she sought to fill her time with various activities. She considered accelerating plans to have children, hoping it would give her a new purpose and fill the void, but she hesitated, realizing the gravity of the step. During this period, Lily, a new employee at work, entered her life. She took on the role of mentor, showing her all the intricacies of the work process, but their relationship quickly evolved into something more than just colleagues. They grew close, had lunch together, exchanged phone numbers, and before she knew it, Lily became her best friend. They spent time together outside of work, sharing personal experiences all within a month. Their friendship developed rapidly, but at the time she was just glad to have found a close person she could trust. Since adolescence, she had been an introvert, so she didn't have many friends with whom she had close relationships. Sam noticed the change in her behavior and how much happier she had become with Lily in her life. He was glad she had made a friend, especially given her previous reclusiveness. His support of her friendship with Lily made her feel good, at least initially. She never imagined the unexpected turn this story would take. Observing Lily, the narrator couldn't help but notice her casual and flirtatious nature, which increasingly attracted her attention. It seemed Lily had a special gift for flirting with almost everyone she met. This made the narrator wonder, especially since Lily was in a serious relationship but didn't hesitate to flirt openly. Ultimately, the narrator decided to ask Lily about it. In response, Lily shared that she and her partner adhered to the concept of open relationships. This news piqued the narrator's interest, who, in turn, confessed her desire to experience something more than just her relationship with Sam. However, she knew Sam was a proponent of monogamous relationships. At that moment, Lily suggested attending a swingers party. She explained that since a full transition to an open relationship wasn't possible at the moment, participating in such an event could be a compromise. This would provide an opportunity to experiment with partner swapping or even a threesome to get a taste of the world of non-monogamy. Lily's proposal aroused not only nervous excitement in the narrator, but also genuine interest. Returning home, the protagonist delved into studying all sorts of information about swingers parties, seeking to learn all the intricacies and features of this phenomenon. She was captivated by the wildness and unusualness of what was happening, but the prospect of convincing Sam of this idea seemed almost impossible. She understood that any mention of such a thing would provoke a sharp rejection from him, and persuading him to even discuss it seemed impossible. Despite her certainty of Sam's negative reaction, the heroine remained excited and curious. Lily, on the other hand, was persistent, constantly pushing her to talk to Sam. At first, the heroine brushed off these suggestions, but her friend's words stuck in her mind, making her feel like she was missing out on something amazing by refusing to even try to discuss it. After several days of reflection, she decided to raise the issue with Sam, feeling extremely nervous. She feared his reaction and didn't want to ruin their existing relationship. But Lily's encouragement gave her courage, and she hoped for an open and honest conversation. However, when she finally dared to talk about the swingers party, Sam showed no enthusiasm whatsoever. The heroine poured out her soul to him, telling him about her feelings of depression and suffocation in the marriage, about her curiosity about new sensations and explorations. She emphasized that it wasn't about an open relationship, but only a one-time experience at a swingers party. But Sam remained adamant. He categorically stated his disinterest in any form of non-monogamy and even asked if she was already cheating on him. The heroine honestly answered no, explaining that she was only driven by curiosity and a desire to try something new. Sam firmly stated that he considered any sexual experimentation outside of marriage unacceptable. Despite all attempts to explain the concept of consensual non-monogamy and prove that it wouldn't be cheating, he remained stubborn and refused to yield, equating it to betrayal, despite all her assurances to the contrary. Sam had an unwavering commitment to monogamy, a deeply held conviction. He made it unequivocally clear to his partner that her involvement in such activities without his consent would result in an immediate divorce. This news was a heavy blow to her, and she had to relinquish her desires. However, when she shared her struggles with Lily, Lily expressed confidence that Sam could be persuaded to change his mind with enough effort and persistence. Following Lily's advice, the woman began subtly pressuring Sam, aiming to shift his perspective on the idea of a swingers party. Yet, contrary to expectations, the situation started to worsen. Her mood plummeted, and she was constantly irritable and tense. She began snapping at Sam for no apparent reason, neglecting her household duties, and her demeanor became sullen and unfriendly. Despite this, Lily remained her unwavering supporter. She insisted that the woman deserved to fulfill her desires and that Sam should compromise. Lily's support emboldened her and reinforced her belief in the righteousness of her actions. Even when Sam noticed her drastic changes and tried to discuss what was happening with her, she brushed him off, refusing to listen to his arguments. Over time, the situation between them steadily deteriorated, like a sinister shadow engulfing their relationship. She obsessively insisted on things that Sam clearly disapproved of, creating an atmosphere of oppressive tension and awkwardness in their home. Their conversations, once filled with warmth and understanding, invariably devolved into heated arguments, and the rare moments of silence felt strained and unnatural, like a forced smile. It seemed they were constantly walking on eggshells, where every wrong word could trigger an explosion. Driven by a desire to understand what was happening, Sam repeatedly tried to have heart-to-heart talks with her, but she displayed unwavering stubbornness. She built an impenetrable wall around herself, convinced of her own righteousness and that Sam simply couldn't understand her. She was so consumed by her desires that she completely disregarded the emotional pain she was inflicting on the person she loved. Their home, which had once been filled with love and laughter, had turned into a battlefield, where each day brought new wounds. She became distant, capricious, and neglected her responsibilities, as if deliberately destroying everything they held dear. Consumed by pain and bewilderment, Sam couldn't understand why she was behaving this way, and why she couldn't see how much she was pushing him away. Despite his boundless patience and genuine love, he was unable to change her mind. She seemed trapped in her own world of dreams and fantasies, completely blind to the damage she was inflicting on their relationship. This was a period of profound trials for both of them, and neither of them could imagine how to bridge the growing chasm that had divided their hearts. The tension in their relationship reached a critical point when Sam, sitting down with his wife, confessed his deep dissatisfaction with the current home environment. This statement hit her hard. Initially, she reacted with accusations, placing all the blame on her husband. However, Sam, remaining calm and reasonable, managed to convince her to see the situation from his perspective. He emphasized that each of them had the right to their own feelings and experiences, and that joint efforts were needed to restore harmony. In a moment of desperation, the woman proposed what seemed to her to be a radical solution: attending a swingers party. To her astonishment, Sam agreed. She saw this as a personal victory, a triumph of her will. Lily, a close friend, actively supported her, like a coach preparing an athlete for an important competition. The woman convinced herself that this party would be a magic key to resolving all their problems. In her mind, she envisioned a future where, after this event, she would once again become the loving and caring wife she once was, and their relationship would return to its former idyllic state. However, being completely absorbed in anticipating the upcoming event, she completely disregarded Sam's feelings. In her mind, since he had agreed, it meant he had no objections. Now, looking back, she realizes how self-centered and short-sighted she was at that moment. On the day of the long-awaited party, she was filled with excitement and anticipation. She tried to convince Sam that the evening promised to be unforgettable, but deep down she had doubts about his comfort. However, she brushed aside these concerns, convinced that this was the key to her personal happiness. When they crossed the threshold of the house where the music was blasting, she couldn't help but notice the obvious discomfort on Sam's face. He tried his best to support her, but it was clear that he felt out of place. The party atmosphere, unfamiliar faces, and loud music were all foreign to him, and she could sense his growing unease. They tried to engage with the other guests, but their efforts felt strained and unnatural. Sam was polite and courteous, but she sensed he longed to be back in his familiar surroundings. She, on the other hand, was absorbed in the general merriment, eager to experience new sensations and adventures. However, as the night wore on, it became painfully clear that she had made a serious mistake. Sam's discomfort only intensified, and she was overcome with guilt for dragging him to an event he clearly disliked. As they left the party and headed home, an invisible wall seemed to have grown between them. Sam remained silent, but she could feel his disappointment and resentment. The tension in the air was palpable, and she realized the situation had taken an undesirable turn. The author's attempt to rectify the situation had backfired unexpectedly. The celebratory event, intended as a magic bullet for restoring their relationship, had yielded the exact opposite result. Instead of the expected bonding, the party highlighted the depth of pressure the author was putting on Sam, which only exacerbated their estrangement. After the ill-fated party, Sam withdrew into himself, minimizing his communication with the author. Every attempt to engage him in conversation was met with an invisible but palpable wall. It was as if he had erected an impenetrable fortress around himself, securely shielding himself from the outside world. The author, in desperation, tried every possible way to restore the lost connection. She took on extra household chores, striving to demonstrate her willingness to make amends. Preparing his favorite meals, small tokens of affection, all were aimed at breaking through the icy barrier that had formed between them. However, despite all her efforts, Sam remained unapproachable. The situation was like trying to hold on to shifting sand. The more actively the author tried to reach Sam, the more he distanced himself. His silence spoke volumes, testifying to his pain and disappointment. The weight of realizing her own actions pressed down on the author like an unbearable burden. Guilt gnawed at her from within. The realization that she had pushed a loved one into an action that contradicted his desires haunted her. In her heart, a wistful longing grew to return to those carefree times when their union was full of joy and harmony. However, despite all attempts to restore lost understanding, Sam seemed to have made a final decision, and the wound inflicted was too deep. Attempts to share her worries with Lily, to discuss the changes in Sam's behavior, fell on deaf ears. Lily simply brushed it off, considering his reaction excessive, unaware of the full depth of what was happening. Returning home on that fateful day came as a shock. Her belongings were on the porch. Sam had simply put her out. Frantic calls and knocks on the door went unanswered. Finally, Sam appeared at the doorstep and calmly but firmly stated his desire to separate. He explained that after much thought, he had come to the conclusion that she put her interests above his feelings, causing him pain. There was no yelling or hysterics in his voice, but every word struck like a dagger. He announced his intention to file for divorce and insisted on her leaving, emphasizing that the house was his. He had even taken care to put her belongings outside. Devastated, she begged him to listen, but Sam remained unwavering. The realization of the imminent loss of everything she held dear, due to her own selfishness, was a crushing blow. Desperate pleas could not shake Sam's unyielding resolve. He offered her freedom of action, but this gesture seemed meaningless in the absence of love and past intimacy. At this pivotal moment, a painful realization dawned. Lily was not the reliable friend she had always seemed to be. Plunged into the depths of despair, she spent long hours in tears, trying to come to terms with Sam's relentlessness. No amount of persuasion could change his decision. It became clear that the only way out was to temporarily leave the house, to return when passions had subsided. The packing felt like a nightmare. Visiting her parents' house seemed unbearable due to the impending reproaches and accusations. Her parents loved Sam like a son and would undoubtedly place all the blame on her. In search of a safe haven and understanding, she dialed Lily's number, hoping to find support. However, instead of a lifeline, she faced a harsh collision with reality. Lily, without hesitation, cut her off, placing all responsibility for what had happened on her shoulders. The words that they had never been close friends, and that she would have to sort out this mess on her own, sounded like a treacherous blow. The person she trusted, whom she considered a close friend, turned away in her time of need, revealing their true colors. Finding herself in a situation with no way out, she decided to temporarily settle in a hotel. Overwhelmed by feelings of betrayal and confusion, she found refuge there from her raging emotions. Now she has to face the consequences of her own reckless actions, which have led to complete chaos in her life. She is not yet ready to turn to family or close friends for support, fearing not so much advice as reproaches and admonitions along the lines of, "I warned you." That's why she decided to share her feelings anonymously, where she feels safer. She doesn't need advice or harsh criticism, just the opportunity to vent her accumulated resentment and sorrow. She realizes that over time someone may come to her aid, but now it's hard for her to look beyond the immediate consequences of her actions. She doesn't know when or how things will return to normal. All she can do is weather the storm, spend time reflecting on what happened, and perhaps then she will be ready to face the world again. She believes that Sam will eventually be able to forgive her. Right now, she understands that he needs space to think things over and get through it. It is impossible to quickly fix what has been broken so deeply, especially when she neglected his feelings, selfishly seeking her own satisfaction. She is convinced that time and reflection can do wonders. Right now, emotions are too strong and chaotic, and any attempt to rush things will only make the situation worse. Sam needs to calm down, weigh everything, and understand what he wants in the future. Meanwhile, she tries to analyze her actions and learn from what happened. This is a difficult test, but she believes that in the end, it will make her stronger. For now, she will wait patiently, give Sam the space he needs, and hope that over time the wounds will heal and they can find a path to forgiveness. A day after her revelations on Reddit, the author shares her thoughts and plans for the future, struck by the scale of the response, which mixed support and criticism. She rejects suggestions of incompatibility with her husband Sam, emphasizing their long-standing connection rooted in childhood. The author admits that her transgression was a fleeting manifestation of selfishness, not a symptom of deep disagreements, confident that their union will withstand this test, as it has previous ones. Disappointment in her friend Lily has been a painful lesson. Lily's behavior in a difficult moment opened the heroine's eyes to the true nature of their relationship, which led to a breakup. For the first time since the breakup, the author turned to her sisters, anticipating reproaches, but was met with understanding and a willingness to help. The sisters agreed to mediate in a conversation with her parents, who, in turn, have influence over Sam's parents. The author hopes that her parents will be able to convince Sam to make contact or soften his anger. She places great hope in this plan, knowing Sam's respect for her parents and their ability to influence his decision about forgiveness. The author expresses sincere gratitude to the Reddit community for their support and advice during such a difficult time. She is determined to rectify the situation and believes in the success of her endeavors. Since the author's last post on Reddit, the situation has taken a dramatic turn. Despite all the efforts and support of loved ones, Sam has been adamant in his decision not to forgive the protagonist of the story. According to mutual acquaintances, Sam categorically refuses to compromise, remaining deaf to pleas for forgiveness. The news of Sam's inflexibility was a crushing blow to the author. Her parents informed her of the need to pack her things and return to her childhood home, as there was no hope of reconciliation. This phone call triggered a storm of emotions and tears. The harsh reality of returning to her former life stood before the heroine in all its fullness. The prospect of returning home entails the inevitable loss of her job, which is a serious blow. The 2.5-hour distance between her parents' home and her current workplace makes daily commutes impossible. Despite her modest salary, this job was an important source of income. Fortunately, the management was understanding of the situation, and the dismissal will not create problems with staffing. Nevertheless, the loss of her job will be a serious test for the author's financial well-being, and she will have to find a way to cope with this problem. The author expresses sincere gratitude to her parents for their support and understanding, although she admits that accepting their help is not easy. Realizing the consequences of her own actions and the need to start life anew has become a lesson in humility for her. In such moments, one can only accept the situation and try to make the most of it. Things have taken a serious turn. The lawsuit is gaining momentum, and the heroine has been summoned to court. The prospect of a lawsuit fills her with genuine fear. The lack of communication with Sam is particularly alarming. All attempts to contact him have failed miserably. Messages go unanswered and calls are ignored. Moreover, Sam has learned to recognize her calls even from unfamiliar numbers and hangs up. User comments, full of criticism and negativity, do not add optimism. Nevertheless, she decided to share this information with everyone following the developments. Apparently, this is the last message for those who have been following this story from the beginning. The divorce process turned out to be surprisingly simple. The documents sent by Sam have already been signed, eliminating the need for further struggle. The short-lived marriage, the absence of children, and jointly acquired property greatly simplified the procedure. The house originally belonged to Sam, and she does not intend to dispute this fact, seeking to complete this difficult stage of her life as soon as possible. The experience left a deep mark, exacerbated by Lily's agonizing silence. In her heart, she had hoped for a call or at least a short message of sympathy, but her expectations were in vain. Contrary to her parents' assurances, the employment process turned out to be a real challenge. The modern labor market is an arena of fierce competition, but I have faith in a quick success. The opinions expressed in the comments varied widely, but I'm especially grateful to those who showed kindness and understanding. Most likely, this is my final entry, so I want to express my gratitude to everyone who followed my story and participated in it.